Mic's on. All right. Well, let's go through at least the parts that will work. It's just always everything when it comes to development. Unfortunately, uh, I was debugging for quite a while until I realized the freaking worst luck I could possibly have. I swear, the domain name tictactoe.info that I was using in Wednesday's lecture expired between lectures, and I didn't realize it until just now that that I lost my domain name. It just happened to expire at that exact moment. So apparently 1 year ago I was teaching a course with similar flow and got that domain name right at this part of the semester, and that happens to be when it expires next year. So we got lucky on Wednesday that we still had the domain name, and then in between lectures I lost it. So I of course rebought it, but it might take a bit for the DNS to update. So maybe we'll do this without a live site. It's kind of unfortunate, but hey, let's do what we can. So let me get out of debug mode and start talking about some things that we're going to see today. So let's yeah, it's it's bad luck, but in this game it's almost always bad luck, it seems, in development in general. I'm sure many of you can relate. Let's clear this and clear this to Docker PS. See what containers we have running. So we do have running our MongoDB. Actually, this is no, I named them the same. We should get away with this. So we do have our ecom app, which isn't really an ecom app anymore, but our chat app from last time. We do have it localhost 8080. We do have it running. I mean, we can view the website like this at least. Hey, it's whatever we can do. So last time we were playing with this app and we were chatting on it, and I walked through how the database is set up and how we got this thing up and running. And unfortunately, looking through code, that might be what we're doing today. But I want to give more examples and talk more about this. And also, if anybody has questions while we're going through this, the whole goal of this week, and especially Wednesdays and today's lectures, is to show you how you can use these ideas, how you can use Docker Compose and databases and stuff to finish your phase 2 of your app. So if you have questions, you're thinking, I know it's almost a little more than a full week away, so some of you might not be thinking about it yet, but you really should be, especially with 2 homeworks so close together. But anything that you need, any stumbling blocks that you see for completing that project, that phase of the project, let me know, because that's what I'm trying to show you here. Like, what are the snags that you're going to come across? Some of you may come across the same roadblock that I just hit, but hey, that's part of the game sometimes, and we can talk about that in a Q&A once I can find the solution. I was up all night building the site, and then you go to put it on in production, and no, that's not what happened. Where did I find the bug? Anyway, I built this nice site. I'm happy with it, but yeah, okay. So we have this site up and running. I'll try to stop rambling there. We have this site up and running, and I have 2 containers, a Mongo container, and you know what? I do actually have to Docker. I do have to stop this one. This is the wrong Mongo. This is the Mongo for my Python site that I just built that we'll take a look at later. So let's get out of this, get back to this site. We're gonna run our ecom app, so I have the right database running. And I actually want to run this in the background just to show you what's going on. So let me cancel out of this. So let's get that one step further to the full experience of what phase 2 is going to be. Phase 2, we are going to detach these like we did for phase 1. So let me do it in the full way. So we have these 2 containers running, this one for our MongoDB database and one for our app itself. And we can see these, yes, I meant Docker. And we can see these apps running. We can see our MongoDB that we just did not start up 7 minutes ago. So we do have 2 MongoDBs running right now. Thought I killed that one. Didn't it say? So I have these 2 containers running right now. One for Mongo and one for the app. And the app is communicating with the Mongo. So let's take this app, this ID here, and do something we haven't seen last time. This is probably the same ID, isn't it? Is I want to enter into this. Actually, I don't think I got to this last time, did I? But I want to enter into my container and see what's going on in there. So I effectively have 2 brand new Ubuntu machines that are bare minimum just to run my my apps, to run MongoDB, to run the app itself. And sometimes you want to go and take a look at what's going on in these things. So let's enter into the Mongo container. And I'm going to use this, I can't do that here. So I'm going to use docker exec. So I want to execute a command inside a container. I'm going to give the container ID, and I want to run bash. So I want to get a bash script inside this container. So I'm going into this container and running bash. And now I'm at the command line inside a container. So if you're, for anyone keeping score, I'm on my desktop at home. I SSH'd into a remote server, a DigitalOcean server in New York City, and then I entered into a container inside that server in DigitalOcean's one of their server rooms. So I'm 2 levels removed from the computer that I'm actually sitting at. 2 levels of virtualization. I'm sure DigitalOcean gave me a virtual machine or a container itself. So I'm a few layers and many miles separated from where I'm actually sitting. So sometimes it's just neat to take that in, what's actually happening here. I'm typing on a virtualized container in a server room somewhere across the state. Anyway, so now that I'm here, I can look around. It's a full Ubuntu image. I can see all the regular Ubuntu stuff. Let me check out my home directory, which should be empty, etc. Oops. And since this is only really running MongoDB, actually, so I'm going to be interested in just to run top. It's only running MongoDB, my bash shell that I just entered, and also top that I just ran to see this information. And I can see my my resources and all that stuff. It's a full machine. It's a regular old machine, but inside a Docker container. So let's take a look at the one thing that is actually running, our MongoDB. And I can enter the Mongo command line to enter into this process to see what's going on with Mongo. So Mongo is, of course, storing our data, but we can interact with it with the command line and give it Mongo queries right in this command line terminal, this CLI. So let's take a look what's in here. I can show my databases that I have. 3 of these are just part of Mongo, and then chat is the one that we built for our app. So I want to use this chat database. I'm going to show the collections in here. So this is going to show me every single collection that I've created. There's only one. We only use this for one app, and that collection is called history. So if I go, if I use this syntax, db, the current database that I'm using, I have entered the chat database. So that database, chat is the collection. So I want to use this database. I want to specify the collection for this database, and then give it a query. I want to find, for our purposes, I just want to find everything. And I'm going to call .pretty on this. So .find, actually I'll show you both. .find is going to give me, I was afraid I was in the wrong one. that fear has come true. But that would show us all of the information that's in this thing. So let me exit out of that one. Let me try. That should be the right one. Oh boy. Yeah, that's the... Yeah, I was in the right one. What the hell? Where'd my data go? Oh my goodness. Chat, back me up. Was that... No, I swear it didn't say that before, didn't I? No, I'm just dumb. Show collections, history, and then db.chat. I specified the DB name again. All right, well, at least nothing screwed. I'm just dumb sometimes. So history. Oh, jeez. What a... it's a rough one. Let me... I clearly need more caffeine here. I was up till 3 building that beautiful app, which I might not even be able to show. So now I'm tired and don't have an app. Oh, well. So this is going to show me all the information that's in the database, but it doesn't show me it in the most friendly format. I like to call pretty on this. We're just going to pretty print the JSON values, the JSON information here. So then we can see all of the messages that we sent yesterday, all that communication, all that joking around, everything we did last time. All that information is going to be here. You can see these IDs that I always filter out. You can see that each entry into the database, each document does get this unique ID. Then we get all our username and messages, everything that we would expect from this database. And here we could start making changes to this. Maybe we don't like this long username. We could go filter that out, and then I can update my app, patch that to get rid of that vulnerability. Well, I don't know about vulnerability, but that feature I don't want. And we can see all these messages. So we can enter into these Docker containers. Let me exit out of that shell. We can enter into these Docker containers, and if I go into my app container itself, we can see a similar story. Of course, we don't have Docker running, but we can see all of our information. And notice when I was in the Mongo container, and I did an ls, I was at the root of my system, and I could see all those root system directories. I could go there here if I cd and ls. I can see all that same stuff in this machine, but if you recall, the Docker file, for this, when we ran these 2 lines to set our home directory and then navigate to that directory, once we did this workdir/root, we changed our directory. This is the same thing as saying cd/root. So if I do cd/root, I'm right where I already was, right in this home directory, and the home directory uses tilde as the shorthand. So I can also do cd tilde. It's going to take me to the same place. So I'm in the directory that has all the files for my app, and I can see all these files. I can see my app running. I have Node running my app, and I can see that process, and I can just check out everything, make sure everything's going right. If I have any file I/O, I could go in here and check out those files, make sure everything's happening the way I want it to be, and just generally keep tabs on things. This is going to be very helpful during debugging, especially to navigate into these containers and make sure they're doing what you expect them to be doing. All Alright, so I want to stop these containers. See if they actually cooperate this time. That's the one I already stopped. Why would I stop the one I already stopped? So let's stop all those containers. We should have nothing at localhost 8080. Nothing's running there. And let's go to our other app. Let's take a look at some code to see how a different app would run. Let me just just out of curiosity, I want to see if this thing's gonna run. If I'm really lucky, maybe it'll even be on tic-tac-toe.info. Man, that pisses me off. I can't believe I should have been. I mean, I gotta blame myself. I should have been watching my domain names. But curl http empty reply. Awesome. So I want to stop this. Stopping. And let's take a look at what's going on with this app. So the Docker file is going to be very similar to what we saw last time, except we're running Python instead of Node for our app. I'm going to install my requirements just like we did with npm before, except we're using pip. Expose port 8000, that's where I'm going to run my app. And we're going to install this wait command to be able to wait for our database to get up and running. Docker compose. Pick. No, I don't want pick. Go. Docker compose. Similar story again. I guess I can get rid of these two lines. Run Mongo. Expose Mongo's port. And then run the app and expose and map 8000 inside to 8080 outside and wait for Mongo. So we've seen that stuff. Yeah, I'll keep that. Let's run this in the background. Seriously, it's not gonna. Well, I guess because it's not. No, it is localhost. Alright. Anyway, let's see what this app. You know what? Are you sure? Oh, you're sure. No, you're not sure. If that's really what was holding me up, was an import that wasn't satisfied, that I wasn't using. Well, let's let that build for a while. Let's go there over here and take a look at the code. So there's one big thing that I want to highlight throughout all this is how we're going to save files when we have a database, because this gets there's common strategy, something we should all be doing that might not be the first guess that everyone does. So a database is meant to have fast lookups and very efficient ways of storing things, but it's not necessarily made for storing large pieces of information. So when we have file uploads, when you have the multimedia uploads for your app, we don't necessarily want to store those in the database. Now, that might be the best approach for certain cases, but it's generally not the best thing to do to store your static files inside a database. What you want to do instead, and what we'll see here, is store the file name in the database, and then store the actual file on disk. So we'll have a directory, and hopefully we can see this working. I think at least localhost we can get this, see this in action. But we're going to save the file in a directory, and then in the database just store a reference to that file. What's that file name? And then link the two that way. So we have both file IO and databases. And you could use a CDN as well. So, but you don't want to store them in the database itself. And one strategy that we'll see even later is that we'll store our files, have our files served by a separate server. So a CDN, content delivery network, is where we'll store our static files, so that our static files can be cached. Static files is any file that's not going to change. Anything where somebody requests that file, like your index.html, if you're not using, or your JavaScript or CSS, if you're not using templates, that file is going to be byte for byte identical every single time somebody requests it. So you put that in a CDN, which is made for advanced caching techniques and very efficient ways of delivering those static files. And then you can store those. All right, I'm giving up on that one. But you can store those files and have those running served very efficiently. Then you'd have your app logic, anything that's dynamic, anything that depends on user actions, anything that interacts with the database to be able to serve dynamic content. That's all going to be stored in your app server. So that's what we would do later on. We'll save our files to the CDN and have the CDN deliver that information. Get it running on 8,000, and then it's going to be some really silly thing. So that's what we do in the future. So we're kind of building towards that today, where we're keeping our static files separate from our logic and from our database, since those static files won't change. So let's go back into this and take a look at what we have. So there's a Flask server, for what it's worth. If you're not using Flask, that won't really matter to you. SQL, I'll show you a SQL version of this site too. I have it in as a backup. I have a SQL version. But this is going to be a Mongo version. I'm going to import my Mongo client. I'm going to connect to Mongo and clean up a little bit of this. I'm going to connect to Mongo. I'm going to get the database that I want, similar to what we saw in the Node app last time. I'm going to get the database that I'm looking at, and I'm going to get the collection, whatever collection I'm using, to be able to store my images. So I'm going to get the database, get the collection, and image collection. That's what I'm going to work with throughout this app. I have both sockets and Ajax, so similar to we're using file IO and databases. We're also using mixed strategies for our app to be able to serve content. So our app is going to use both Ajax and WebSockets. I'm going to use Ajax. I'm going to use this in the same idea that we used on Wednesday. I'm going to use Ajax for when a user first loads the page. They're going to make an Ajax request for all of the history, that all of the images that have already been uploaded. I didn't even say what this site is yet. This is an image sharing site, so people can upload images. Everybody can see those images. and also vote on each image, so they can say I like that image or not. And I don't have any protections, so somebody can just mash the. It's basically a meme sharing site. So somebody could mash the upvote button if they really like something and want to spend the time to sit there and mash, or they want to write a little script. I don't have any protections like that. We'll get into that stuff next week. Because next week when we talk about authentication, because without authentication, how do you prevent somebody from voting twice? If they're authenticated, you can go by their account. I could build in something to look at their IP and restrict it by IP address, but that's a topic for next week of why those strategies fall short. Specifically, if you're on like UB's network, there's a pool of IP addresses that get shared, and every time you connect, you just get one of those IP addresses. If you're blocking by IP, it's just not a good strategy when you have a shared network like that. Or if two people from the same household want to vote, they can't do that either if you're doing it by IP. There's a lot of shortfalls with that. So when somebody uploads an image, we're going to get that post request. So we could potentially send the images over WebSockets. But I'm going to do it with the form and upload the way we have before. I don't know if I'm sure there's pros and cons to both approaches, but I'd say they're pretty darn close to the same in effect. But we're going to, but this way we've already seen, we're going to get that image in the upload, and this library has a nice just .save as part of Flask. Just .save that file and give it a path, and that's where I'm going to save that image. I'm going to generate random image names, so I'm not using the user provided names. Avoid all those problems that we talked about on homework 4 of having name collisions and also users trying to use that file name to be able to break your system to try to hack into things. We don't want any of that. So I'm going to give it a random name. For this strategy, I do have a small chance of having name collisions. I'm willing to accept that for an example site. Then I'm going to insert that into my database. So we finally get to our database, insert this document with the name of that image, which is the same as the file name, and also the number of votes initialized to 0. And then I'm going to send this message over my sockets to tell everybody that a new image was uploaded. So we have a few things going on here. Somebody just used a form to make a post request, a multi-part post request to upload an image. I saved that image to disk. I also stored a reference to that image in my database. So I have the image itself on disk, just in a directory, and then my database storing a reference so I'm aware of where that image is, that image exists. And then also using sockets to broadcast to everybody, hey, a new image exists. Y'all should run your Ajax and get this image. You should make some more requests, get this image, and render it on your site. So, and then to get images, just find everything, filter out the ID, and send it all. Send it to the user. Send all of that information. When someone votes, they're going to send a socket message. They're going to send a message of type vote, and we're going to use a specific format. The image name, this message that we get is going to be JSON formatted. It's going to have an image name, which is the reference. That's the image that they're voting on currently. And also, this is up. Are they upvoting or downvoting? This will be a Boolean. If it's true, we want to upvote. If it's false, we want to downvote. We're going to get that image, filter it by its name. I'm going to use this find one so I don't get a collection. I just get one single unique image. I know these image names should be unique, so just give me the one. Usually find is going to give you a data structure with all your results. I only expect one, so find one is a convenient method to say, hey, I only expect one result, just give me one. And then I'm going to update that. We haven't seen this yet, but this is in the documentation I linked that you should be reading if you're using Mongo. I'm going to update every document in this collection with an image name equal to the image name that they're voting on. And I'm going to use this set the number of votes to current votes. whatever that value is. So this is what we're using to update a record. We're going to filter by, in this case, the presumably unique. I do have that potential collision, but this unique name, and then set whatever values I want using this JSON style formatting. Is how MongoDB does its thing. Set votes, the value I want to set, and the value I want to set it to. And then let everybody know that this vote just happened. So everybody else can update. Save that. Index, nothing really to see here. Importing my JavaScript, and then setting up the first image upload form. You know what I might be able to do? I really want you to be able to see this app. I can run it on my laptop. I feel like a student, but it works fine on my laptop, but my laptop isn't hooked up to the stream. And then we set up the first form. We're going to use that multi-part and AJAX strategy that we saw before. So I'm going to call a method, this upload image, and encode this with multi-part method post. I don't think I need this, actually. That doesn't have to be there. But and then have some way for users to upload an image. And then when, and then when we upload an image, we're going to use that same stuff that we saw earlier. I'm going to get all the form data. Since we have a file, we need to use some strategy like this. Get all that multi-part encoded form data, and then send that to that image upload path that we saw earlier. And then I'm not doing anything with the response. I really would need to send information to the client, to the server. But the server is responding. I didn't mention it, but if you saw it quick, it either says success or something broke. I'm just going to log that so there's some information, some response from the server. Loading images is getting that. I guess I should talk about it, right? Getting that get images, that gets every image from the database. That it's going to request that path, and then when it gets its response, it's going to render all of those images onto the page. And the last piece, controller. We're going to set up our sockets. We're going to listen for 2 WebSocket messages whenever a new image is uploaded or whenever a vote has been cast. We're going to send that AJAX request to get the images that are already there. And this render image that we saw is going to, oh man, this looks way more gross than I remember. But render image is going to append a new image to the end of my HTML. I'm going to pull that images div, which was in the HTML, it was just an empty div at the bottom of the page. I'm going to append to that all the code for a new image. I'm going to have the image itself. I'm going to set this max height, so if somebody uploads a really high-res image, it doesn't take up the entire page. It's only going to be max of 300 pixels high. And then 2 buttons, the source equal to the actual image that I want to render. And then 2 buttons, an upvote button and a downvote button. And also display the number of votes for this image, so we can have that interaction that we want. The image tag, so once I add this image element to the DOM, the browser is going to see that change, find the image, look up its source, and make a new request for this data. So we will, so once we update this part of the DOM, there will be another request to our server for that image, and our server is going to serve up that image. So we're using WebSockets to just say, hey, a new image exists, adding the HTML for that to display that image, and then the browser is going to make another request for that image to the server. So we get quite a bit going on. And you can start seeing, if it's not super clear yet, that we're combining all these technologies that we saw. We're going to start seeing this more and more at this part of the semester. We have all these technologies that we're aware of, and now we can start combining them to accomplish the goals that we want to accomplish. I don't think there's much more interesting in this one. When the upvote or downvote buttons hit, we're going to emit those messages. This is a little interesting, right? The upvote and downvote buttons, when I added those to the page, we have one big kind of issue, kind of question that we have to answer here, is that when somebody clicks an upvote or downvote button, which image are they upvoting or downvoting? That's information that we have to have. And when we're building our code dynamically, client side like this, I guess it could be server side too, but when we're building our HTML dynamically, what I'm doing here is when I say on click, these buttons on click are going to call upvote or downvote. I'm going to pass in a parameter to the upvote or downvote button that is the image name. That in this case is exactly the name of the image that I'm rendering right now, which I should probably just change that variable name. So I'm going to pass in the image name, and I'm going to build that right when I'm rendering this image, right when I'm adding this image to the page. Now when upvote or downvote's called, it's going to have the exact image name that's being upvoted or downvoted, and then it can send that to the server. It can say, hey, I just got another vote. It's for this image. It's either up or down. And then we can handle that vote on the server side, and then broadcast that vote to all the clients. That's kind of a walkthrough of the whole app, which I'm not ready to give up. Maybe this will probably be during the Q&A, especially if nobody has questions, you'll get to see me debug this thing. Hopefully we'll get it running at least by the end of the Q&A. I mean, I don't even have my DNS yet, though. Man, that's... I guess I could switch it to another domain name, I suppose. We do have... It is working there. Can I... Why didn't that work? Yeah, that's... Well, I assume you typed that before you saw what I just did. But yeah, I'm trying to access it directly by the IP address, the IP and port. So I'm not... I don't care about leaking the IP address because that information is already out there. So if you just go to CSE 312.com, you can already see that IP address. You can see the IP address of my server. Yeah, or you could do IP lookup. You could type in my domain name to any Alt. Any IP lookup tool. Yeah, I know. It's... What is happening in my life right now? So you could also look up the domain name in one of these tools and get the domain. So I'm not worried about leaking that IP address. That you already have that information. You have this information, and you know that I'm using a DigitalOcean server. All that information is already out there. But Why is this not working? There's like 0%, like zero reason why that wouldn't work. Right? I'm not. Blocking that, am I? I mean, realistically I should be, but I don't think I am. All right, well, I can play around with that during Q&A. Hopefully we can get that going. So let's exit this. Compose up, detach. And let's run these things and then enter in these containers. Unfortunately, we won't be able to see files being saved, which I would have really preferred. But we can at least see, kind of simulate this and show where that would happen. So let's docker exec. And we can take a look at, actually I think we will have some files in there just because I pushed them to the repo. Just as I say that, there's, actually that might, no, that wouldn't be it. But we can see it's the same code, but we already saw that. That's not interesting anymore. But we could see where those files would be saved. They'd be in public /uploads. I wonder, it really shouldn't be, but since I didn't make that directory, that would cause an issue, but I didn't even get to the point where we tried to upload an image, so that's not really, going to be the issue. Or even is there an issue? It's just a DNS thing. Is there a free good cloud hosting service we can use? Kinda. Man, I'm blanking on the name now. There's Heroku is a common one a lot of people like to use. Heroku or AWS has a free tier. You can upload some sites for free. You can host them for free. I mean, the app's running. We just don't have a way to access it in a browser. Which is really unfortunate. But I do have one more thing I want to show. One more thing that I can show. Tic-tac-toe.info. Request URL was not found on this server. That's all we know. You should know more than that, Google. All right, so one more thing I want to show. I have a Mongo database running on this server itself. And if we showed last time that we could curl it, we can contact this database localhost uh, 27017, and we're going to get some message from MongoDB saying, yo, what are you doing? I don't support HTTP. But I just want to use this to show that Mongo is running and it is accepting connections from me. Now, I mentioned that MongoDB by default is only going to accept localhost connections, but if we go into the settings of MongoDB, we can actually allow other connections. So if you go to my IP address of this server and go to 27017, you're going to get connection refused and all this other stuff. But what I've done before this lecture, and this is one IP address I am going to protect, I whitelisted my home IP address. So when I go there, I'm actually going to get this message. But if you go to this exact URL and port, you're not going to be able to hack into my MongoDB. You're not going to be able to access that. But I can access it from home because I whitelisted that IP specifically. If I do the same thing, I'll hold my breath a little bit because I haven't tested this, but there's no reason it shouldn't work. But the way today's been going, I can access that. But if I turn on a VPN, you can see the message. Oh no. And I can see it. Oh boy. Maybe once you start giving it, no, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense at all. Let me take a look at my config. I don't want to be. Oh. Maybe we share the same IP address. The call is coming from inside the house. No. All right. Well, let's cut lecture at least, and we could talk about this during the Q&A. Hopefully, I can get some more stuff working. We at least got the information that we want out there. I got to show you, how these things work and what the code looks like and what you need for your project. I just really wanted to. I spent so many hours on that damn site. I wanted to have it live during lecture, but that's life sometimes.